Good evening, councillors. Let's hope, fingers crossed, it goes well tonight. Who knows? Thank you for attending the meeting for Planning Committee on the 17th of August. Please note this is a reconvened meeting following the adjournment to the meeting on the 10th of August due to unforeseen technical difficulties, which if you were present you would know all about. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Councillor June Molyneux. I'm chair of the committee. Councillor Alex Hilton is vice chair. Please note this is a hybrid meeting. We have members in the council chamber and registered speakers joining remotely via Teams. And the meeting is also being streamed live on YouTube. If you join the call because you're a member of the public who is registered to speak, please note you have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. If you are calling on a phone, you need to press *6 to unmute your device when invited to speak. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or if in the middle of making a point, wind up with a few seconds and finish speaking, otherwise your microphone will be muted. For ease, another agenda pack has been prepared which contains the reports, plans, presentation slides and addendums for each item from the 10th of August. After officers have presented the report, any speakers have made their representations, I'll invite members to make comments. When you want to speak, please raise your hand actually to indicate to me that you wish to speak. When I invite you to speak, please turn your microphone on. Please turn your microphones off when you finish speaking. When speaking, reference the paragraph number to enable everyone to follow you. If the technology fails, which I hope it won't, then I'll adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please can all members respect the COVID measures in place for everyone's safety, and please ensure that any mobile phones are switched off. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if it goes off, exit the way you came in, it's real. Have I any apologies?
We've got apologies from Councillor Boardman.
Thank you. And is Councillor Turner substituting? Okay. Item 3, planning applications to be determined. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for planning applications as follows. Officers will summarise the report. Registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I will grant the applicant or agent a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings. As we're reconvening the meeting from the 10th of August, where we considered and determined item 3A, we will continue with where we left off, but item 3B has been withdrawn, so we are now up to item 3C, land adjacent to Long Meadows, pages 7 to 32, with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item, which is recommended that planning permission is refused, and I have one registered speaker, an objector, Lorraine Shrigley. Lorraine, are you able to speak and hear the proceedings?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. This application site is situated within the settlement of Chorley, within a predominantly residential area. However, the site itself is designated as existing open space and is therefore protected under the provisions of policy HW2 of the Chorley Local Plan. Its characteristics are the contribution that the site makes to the area in terms of visual amenity, and the proposed development would clearly result in its loss. In all other respects, the proposed development would have an acceptable impact on the amenity afforded to neighbouring properties and would not be detrimental to any nature conservation interests. In design terms, the scheme has been amended and the layout, scale and appearance of the development is considered to be acceptable, and officers consider that safe access and egress could be achieved to the proposed parking areas, and it's therefore acceptable in highway safety terms. Although the proposal will deliver 3 houses in a sustainable location, it's considered that this does not outweigh the loss of the protected open space. The application is therefore recommended for refusal, as the proposed development would result in the loss of existing protected open space, which makes a significant contribution to the character of the area in terms of visual amenity. The proposed development is therefore contrary to policy HW2 of the Chorley Local Plan. Thank you, Chair.
Lorraine, would you like to speak now, please? As can you start the timer? Thanks. Lorraine? You're on mute. Star 6.
Apologies.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Would you like to start now? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I do apologise. I don't really know anything about the planning process, other than the fact that a gentleman approached me on my driveway back in May to say, you're encroaching on my land, and thrust some pieces of paper at me. I felt quite intimidated, to be honest. I've lived here for 30 years. When I bought the house, it was an ex-local authority, and the whole of 3 streets on this estate were being, if you will, refurbished by a housing association to sell to private buyers. And when I took the keys to the property, I was surrounded at the side and the back of the house, and between myself and the next door neighbour by a fence. And rightly or wrongly, when I moved into that house, I presumed that every blade of grass within the area up to the fence was part of my garden. About 14 years ago, I had quite a large shed built, closer to the boundary fence than I would have liked for painting and things and maintenance purposes, but there you go. Now, this gentleman seems to, the developer, I think, the owner, seems to assume that my fence should run in a perfectly straight line, whereas my plan from Land Registry shows it's always been on a curve. In other words, the back of the property runs wider than the front of the property. Now, 20 odd years ago, a development was built next door by the same developer, and the piece of land that wants to be developed now is used as a compound for all the equipment, diggers and forklifts and things like that. And I came home one evening to find a barbed wire structure bolted to the fence. Now, I'll be honest with you, the fence between me and the land is about 100 and something foot long. The land over the fence has not been maintained for years, 20 odd years. And I don't understand whether I own the boundary fence or it's a joint ownership. I just know that no one's ever come forward to help with maintenance. 3 years ago, that boundary fence, which was wooden posts within the ground, was not going to last another winter, so I had it replaced. My problem is that the developer's been back again and said that I need to get rid of my shed by September. As far as I'm concerned, the shed is within my garden, the garden that I have enjoyed for 30 years and that I've maintained and that no one else has had access to. The fence was in its original...
Look now, please.
Sorry, thank you.
It's all... The officer wants to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the comments made by the objector, Mrs. Shrigley. Unfortunately, a number of the issues that have been raised relate to a civil matter. So in terms of planning considerations, it's not a material planning consideration for the committee to consider. Thank you.
Okay. Adele?
Yes, Chair, thank you for that. I just want to echo the comments of the legal officer and direct members to the addendum that was published last week, where this matter is reported, and it's set out for members that it is a civil issue and a private legal matter that the planning system can't intervene in. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Anyway, it's over to you, members. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. I think the officers have quite clearly stated this is a breach of policy HW2. These policies are put in place to protect the public against inappropriate development. We're there to protect the open space, so I'm very happy with the officer recommendation for refusal, and I'd like to move it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton, Councillor France. Sorry, why did I say Councillor Hilton then instead of Heaton? I know. Well, it started with the right letter.
Okay, I'm on. I'll second that proposal. I think it's a straightforward decision, and I can't see the point of talking around it all night. So I'll second that proposal.
Thank you. Councillor France, okay. Anyone else wish to make any comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. Councillor. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I could call you anything. You never know.
Thank you, Chair. No, I won't keep the committee long. It's just we have a number of these that come up, these open spaces. There's been some in the past, and there will be certainly some coming up in the future. And I'd just like to emphasise the fact that some people get carried away with these open spaces, that they've got to be beautiful and have a sports theme, and they've got to be landscaped and all the rest of it. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with that. I'd just like to emphasise that. It doesn't matter if it's managed. It doesn't have to be all singing or dancing. The fact is, if we lost it, it would be a loss of character to the area. And people, the trouble with some of these areas is people don't appreciate them until they've gone. So that's why it's up to us to keep protecting them. And so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, everybody else? If not, I'll move to the vote. I've had a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Any against? Okay, Taz?
Thank you, Chair. Members have decided to unanimously refuse planning permission for the reasons outlined in the report in respect of the proposal to erect 3 dwellings at land adjacent to 69 to 70 Long Meadows, Chorley. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3D, Withnell Barn Farm, Chorley Road, Withnell, pages 33 to 56, with an update on your addendum, although the recommendation remains the same, that outline planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I've no registered speakers. Adele?
Thank you, Chair. This is an outline application with all matters reserved for the erection of up to 4 dwellings and associated infrastructure following demolition of the existing buildings on site. There are stables and a portal frame building and barn within the site, and the site lies within the greenbelt. Other constraints include a TPO on part of the site and a public right-of-way. The site is also within a coal low-risk zone. 2 representations have been received which welcome the proposal, but make a number of comments, including matters to do with access to the site. No statutory consultees have raised objections to the proposals, and a number of conditions are recommended by them. As I said, the site is located within the greenbelt and is considered to be previously developed land, given the current use of it. When considering impacts on the openness of the greenbelt, the volume of the buildings proposed is only indicative, given the scheme is in outline with all matters reserved. However, the final volume can be assessed under a reserved matters application to ensure that it's consistent with this outline application. There would be a slight reduction in overall volumes of buildings on the site from the existing 2,102 cubic metres to 1,840 cubic metres. As such, there would be no material increase, rather a decrease when considering impact. Members will be familiar with the concept of previously developed land and have considered applications along these lines previously. Whilst there has been an update to National Planning Policy Framework, the general provisions still remain with a renumbering of paragraphs, and therefore in this instance it's exception G of paragraph 149, which sets out that this development is not inappropriate development in the greenbelt. Impacts on character and appearance, neighbour and community, highway safety, ecology and sustainability, as well as contamination and drainage matters are considered to be acceptable, and a public open space community sum is not required. The application is considered to accord with the relevant policies of the development plan and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Over to you, members. Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to recommend approval for this, but I'd just like to address the comments that are made by people who've written in saying about addressing the width of the lane. And they're saying, can the builders be considered towards the lane? Highways set, while it's narrower than normal, it's in a straight line, so hazards can be seen. Is there anything that we can do that would benefit the access to this road. This side.
Adele?
And thank you, Chair. Given that the local highway authority are not seeking any improvements, we wouldn't be able to justify it. Thank you.
Councillor Marwood, you got you this time.
Press the button as well, that helps. Thank you. Happy to support the recommendation. It is on Greenbelt, but it's previous, as I say, previous development plan. It will end up with an improved visual, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I'm happy to recommend.
Councillor France.
Just a quick one, Chair. I'm just looking at the plan and I noticed there's comments made about rubbish collection and a turning circle. There appears to be one at the side of number 4. Our office is convinced that refuse collection would be okay, that the vehicle would be able to turn round.
Through you, Chair. Obviously, these matters are matters that LCC Highways will look at in terms of their statutory role as a technical consultant. And on that basis, it may be that there has to be some manoeuvring, but there's no reason to suggest it's not adequate.
Okay, any more comments? I've had a proposal and a seconder, so can I ask all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? As
Thank you, Chair. So committee has approved outline permission subject to conditions in the report and the addendum, with all matters reserved for the erection of up to 4 dwellings and associated infrastructure following demolition of existing buildings at Withnell Barn Farm, Chorley Road. Thank you, Chair.
okay, thank you. Item 3E, King George Field, Playing Fields, Chorley Road, Adlington, pages 57 to 72. Adele's going to present this item. The recommendation is the planning permission is granted subject to conditions, and I have registered to speak with the objector Roger Allenson, the ward councillor Kim Snape, and the agent Jason Reynolds. Roger, Kim, Allen, can you all hear me and able to speak?
Yes.
I think you're muted, Roger.
Sorry, technology.
Got you. Okay, Adele, can you present the report?
And thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the provision of 9 car parking spaces and the erection of metal rail fencing. The application site is located in the settlement area of Adlington, and policy V2 of the Chorley local plan states that within such settlement areas that are excluded from the green belt, there is a presumption in favour of appropriate sustainable development. The principle of the proposed development is therefore considered to be acceptable. LCC Highways have raised no objections, and it's considered that there would be no adverse highway impacts. The development would represent a visual improvement as parts of the site are relatively overgrown and unkempt in appearance. The proposed fencing would not appear out of place within the context of the immediate locality, which is a rear alleyway separating houses from the adjacent playing fields. The application is supported by a VAT survey, and GMEU have not raised any objections. They have recommended best practice methods and accept the findings of all reports that have been submitted. The applicant's agent has stated that it is not the intention to remove any trees, and the application form states that no trees would be impacted by the development. However, in the event that tree felling is required, a scheme for appropriately replanting is to be secured by a planning condition in order to protect the amenity of the area. The council's tree officer has advised that the development could have some impacts on trees to be retained as a result of root damage, and adherence to the relevant British standard would minimise this potential. And again, this is to be secured by condition. And the application is recommended for approval, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Adele. Roger, would you like to speak now? And Taz, can you start the timer? I think you're muted again, Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everybody. My only point in relation to this, I suppose, is that this is linked to the planning application in relation to the changing rooms on the sports field. I don't see in any of the papers permission has been given by the Fields in Trust organisation, to whom you are entrusted with the upkeep and use of the field. And I don't know where they've approved a slice of the land being given to a row of terraced houses as a sop to them, because the next application is in relation to the changing rooms. My comments in relation to the changing rooms may well assist in that my suggestion is to move the proposal to the Harding Road corner of the playing field. Sorry, Harding Street. Okay, I'm close. It's only 100 yards away. I'm not expected to know everywhere. The reason for my suggestion there is simply that there's parking there, and you won't need to improve the parking for the owners of the properties, of whom I am one. As for the unkempt area, I think that probably relates to the back street, and there's a good reason for it being unkempt. We don't really like it being used as a racetrack and a cut-through, which is what has happened occasionally. But that's really my only observation in relation to those parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. Kim, would you like to speak now, please?
No, not you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Members, okay. Members, I'm speaking this evening as one of the 3 ward councillors for the Adlington and Anderson ward in support of item 3E that's in front of you. A huge amount of work and local consultation has gone into this application from both officers and from elected members. I'm aware that Councillor Peter Wilson has met with numerous residents over the past 12 months to discuss this application. This application will be a massive improvement to our village. Parts of this area at time, as is documented in the report, have become quite overgrown with grass, and I know we've also been out doing litter picking and things in the area, and some of the residents have previously likened this to the forgotten gateway to the playing fields. However, this application will really revitalise this area for residents. It'll improve things for those who currently live on Chorley Road around this site. And lastly, it will instil pride for all in our village for this really important local sports and recreational facility that we feel that we're so lucky to have on our doorstep in Adlington. And I hope that the committee will support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, would you like to speak now, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. This application is related to the next application on the agenda, application 21-00607. Although we'll cover any relevant points when I speak during the next planning application, I'd like to reiterate that it's not our intention to remove any trees as part of the scheme. However, should any tree removal be required, we will seek to agree a tree planting scheme with the planning officer prior to any felling which may occur. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, over to you, members. Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose that the officer's recommendation. I think it's a good aspect for the forgotten gate.
Thank you. Councillor France.
Happy to second that.
Anybody else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Have I got any against? Okay, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided unanimously to grant planning permission, subject to conditions, to allow for the provision of 9 car parking spaces for number 119 to 135 Chorley Road, and erection of a galvanised steel railings at King George's Field play area, Chorley Road. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Taz. Moving on, item 3F, it's the playing field again. Pages 73 to 102. Adele's going to present this. It's recommending planning permission is granted subject to conditions, and I have 3 registered speakers: Roger Allenson, the objector, Ward Councillor Kim Snape, and the applicant Jason Reynolds. And I'm assuming you can all still hear. Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This proposal involves the demolition of existing buildings and the erection of a sports changing facility building with associated disabled parking space and works. Access to the site would be from the existing vehicular access between 117 and 119 Chorley Road. The site is allocated under policy HW2 of the Chorley Local Plan as existing sports and recreational facilities. 2 representations have been received, 1 objection which accepts that the buildings need to be replaced, and 1 letter in support which raises some issues. The Parish Council support the proposal and Sport England have raised no objections either. United Utilities recommend that further work is carried out to ascertain the exact location of its assets before any work start on site, but recommends conditions be attached to any grant of planning permission. Other consultees raise no objections, subject to various conditions as well. In relation to the acceptability of the principle of the development, policy HW1 of the Chorley Local Plan is relevant as it sets out 4 criteria that proposal should comply with. The proposal complies with 3 of these, with the other being addressed in the committee report. Therefore, the principle of the proposed development is considered to be acceptable, subject to material planning considerations. In particular, in terms of highway safety, the proposal is considered acceptable by LCC Highways, although conditions are recommending relating to contractors' parking and deliveries during the construction period to ensure that there's no unacceptable adverse impacts on residents, and how sustainable transport can be promoted alongside the parking facilities once the facility is opened. The applicant has provided information to address the concerns raised by United Utilities, and it's not considered that the proposed building would detract from the character and appearance of the open space, and therefore complies with other criteria in policy HW1. In addition, it would provide facilities that would meet the requirements of the Football Federation. Overall, the design of the proposal and its impact on the character of the area is considered to be acceptable, and it is recommended that the application is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Okay, Roger, over to you.
I'll put my microphone on first.
Good idea.
Can I just raise one point of order, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
My email, which contained the details of my objection, wasn't included in the documents that were attached to the application until the hearing that was aborted last week, when I managed to get Mr. Jacks to put it on. And it appears as the document, the 8th document from the top within the documentation, because it was put in chronological order. And I don't know if the members have seen that. And if they've not, before it's put to vote, respectfully request that they be allowed to look at that before I address you.
Adele.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members will be mindful that all the documents that we receive in terms of representations in respect of planning applications are actually summarised in the committee report rather than being repeated verbatim. Sometimes representations are not uploaded so that they're published on the website because they contain personal information. However, they are on the file and they are available for inspection at all times by members, which you are all aware of. So in terms of the comments that have been received, members will are referred to the summary points actually detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, Roger. You want to make your representations now.
Thank you. My objections are not about NIMBYism or protecting a view, which I don't have, and I want to publicly applaud the fantastic work done by the coaches and volunteers, encouraging all the youngsters in all weathers. This is fabulous stuff. This is essentially about curing 3 antisocial problems: parking, the folly of youth, and noise, all capable of elimination by one simple solution. Relocate the proposed new building to the quarter in front of the pedestrian gate at the Harding Street car park. This will enable the parents to park close to the changing facilities so Johnny and Johnnyetta don't have to walk far, thus removing the parking issues from Daisy Hill Drive, Berry Street, Mount Pleasant, and Chorley Road. Removes the sense of entitlement displayed by the coaches who park in front of the gate, which are the only access for emergency vehicles and on private land used by the neighbours along the terrace at Chorley Road. It exports the courting couples, the wacky-backy partakers, the egg-throwing cohort, and the litterbugs away from disapproving, reproachful eyes. It enables those youths to explore and push the boundaries as they grow and develop away from prying eyes. Opens up an area which could be put to use for the benefit of other people, An imaginative use such as a sensory garden would expand the use of the park already enjoyed by dog walkers, kite flyers, elderly strollers, young ones enjoying the swings and using the park to learn to balance on bikes and scooters, gaining confidence safely. The pram pushing parents, the safe route to school, and those who want to sit quietly, not just about football. Relocating the planned building would allow for its expansion should the football club come up with a reason to have a social room as they originally wanted. It means United Utilities will discover precisely where their drain and sewer is, helpful for showers and toilet waste generated by the new building. A highway officer who thinks that buildings cause traffic will be vindicated. The parents of the 270 children playing for Adlington and those of their opponents who will use the 7 pitches proposed will park in the car park provided. It saves the cost of taking the strip of park to accommodate the cars for those who live in the terrace on Chorley Road, avoids the legal issues of access, tokenism for providing one parking space for a disabled user, the light pollution from the idiotic proposal to light the path. It avoids the breaching the council's trust obligations to the open spaces quango, avoids the dishonesty of the amended proposal to turn the originally planned building reduced in size 90 degrees and have it on an existing footprint, which the architects have drawn to suit their design rather than to match the building for the footprint, which now exceeds the existing buildings by 120% as they exist. And finally, it's a vote winner. Pleases everyone, save for the unfortunate lone family who live in the only house on Harding Street. Thank you for listening. I'll be grateful if you would read the email of the 26th, which sets this out in further detail.
Thank you. Councillor Snape. Kim.
Yeah, can you hear me? Members, again, I'm speaking in support of this application as one of the 3 ward councillors for Adlington and Anderton ward. Again, I'm aware a significant amount of community engagement has gone into this application in tandem with the previous application. These proposals are a huge welcome investment into our village and have been desperately needed for a long, long time. This is a massive investment from Chorley Council into Adlington, not just for Adlington, but for residents right across Anderton and Heapey too, who also use this facility with their families and are really excited and looking forward to this work starting. I know that residents have also been in touch with the council, not just recently, but over the past few months to see what further plans the council may have to take place on the site over the next year or so, including suggestions such as works to improve footpaths, additional benches, and there've also been requests recently for electric vehicle charging points as well. So to conclude, this application will transform the facilities at King George V playing fields, and I hope that the committee will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, would you like to speak now, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening again, everybody. Whilst there will not be sufficient time to outline all the considerations undertaken during the design process, I trust that the following will sufficiently reiterate key considerations made to provide a high quality and brief compliant scheme. Our brief was to provide a much needed replacement sports changing facility, which complied with the requirements of the local authority, Sports England and Football Foundation. Great efforts to undertake pre-application engagement were made early within the design process. Consultations were undertaken with the local planning authority, building control, Sport England Football Foundation and the local residents via a public consultation meeting held at the existing facility, all to ensure that there was an opportunity for comments to be made and amendments to the proposals addressed as necessary. Following the public consultation, the proposals were reduced in size by circa 40%, and the orientation of the building was changed in an attempt to respond positively to the residents' comments. This reduction primarily consisted of the removal of the community use space, being replaced with a foyer for secondary spend kiosk area only. Although greatly reduced, the roof remains as pitched to provide sufficient space for the heating and ventilation system. Public consultation feedback requested the facilities to be located over the footprint of the existing buildings. However, locating the facility over the footprint of the building closest to the playing fields alone would increase the existing space between the proposal and the dwellings on Chorley Road, thus improving the quality of this area over and above that which was requested. The location proposed would also improve the safety and well-being of the public footpath users by providing a footpath with a clear forward visibility away from any potentially threatening hiding spots that currently exist between the 2 buildings. Other locations within the boundary of the playing fields have been considered in detail. However, due to existing topography, land drainage conditions, and the location of various below-ground utility assets, these locations were demonstrated not to be viable. A single disabled parking space has been proposed adjacent to the changing facility. This, along with level access and disabled toilet provision, has resulted in a fully accessible building which currently does not exist at the playing fields. Impact on the local ecology has been considered from early in the design process. Existing trees will be protected, and although it is intended that no trees are to be removed, new tree planting has been proposed, including within the area between the proposed facility and the dwellings on Chorley Road. This will aid with the softening of the views to the rear of the proposed buildings. Other proposed trees include elm trees, which will continue the great work previously undertaken by the elm tree reintroduction scheme within other areas of the Chorley Borough at Astley Park and Yarrow Valley Country Park. This planting will assist not only with the reintroduction of a tree species that was almost eradicated in the 70s and 80s due to Dutch elm disease, but will also provide a vital habitat for at-risk protected butterfly species. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, over to you, members. Councillor Heaton, Councillor Hill.
Pressing wrong button. Thank you, Chair. As a chairman of a local football club, I was quite interested in this application. Any improvements in football facilities are welcome. There was something in the report about people come changed, but I think that would be the junior teams in our club. They all come changed, ready to play. So this will be for the adults, I assume. So I'll propose that I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of some of the things that the objector has said about alternative locations, we have to consider the planning application that's in front of us this evening. And that is an application that has been through public scrutiny, through public consultation. Changes have been made. I do believe that this would be a huge benefit to redevelopment of the area. It's also improving a sports club, which in turn can have a positive impact on the health and fitness of the football clubs as well. So I'm very much in favour of this. I have no objections, and I'm happy to second that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. No matter what we're talking about, no plan's ever going to be perfect. It's not going to be accepted by all. But I think it's to be commended that this has gone out to residents and asked them what they wanted. And as Councillor just mentioned then, changes were made. Where is it going to go in the future? Well, perhaps in future, a sensory garden could be added to it, as with many other things. But that's not for consideration tonight. So I would go along with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? If not, I'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Have I any against? Any abstentions? Pass.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to grant the Planning Commission unanimously subject to conditions for the demolition of existing buildings and erection of a sports changing facility building with associated disabled parking space and works at King George's Field, Chorley Road, Adlington. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Moving on, item 3G is Romar Churchfold Coppull, pages 103 to 118. Adele's going to present this item, which the recommendation is for refusal, and we've on registered speaker the agent Tony Lang. Tony, can you hear and speak?
I can, thank you.
Thank you. Adele, do you want to present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for a detached carport and workshop. Works are at an advanced stage and the application is therefore retrospective. I would direct members to look at the presentation that's with your agenda pack and you will see it in situ. An almost identical application was refused in May on the basis that the development is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and that it's an incongruous and discordant feature in the street scene. This is a resubmission of that application, although no appeal against the early decision has been submitted. Whilst the application is the same as the previous application, The agent now asserts that the development is infill development or previously developed land, and there are very special circumstances to justify it in the Greenbelt. Very special circumstances that have been advanced include that there is no alternative location for the development, the area has been used as hard standing for vehicles for many years, and that development does not impact on openness of the Greenbelt. However, the application site is within a residential garden in a built-up area and does not comply with the framework definition of previously developed land. The principle of the development in the Greenbelt is therefore not acceptable, and the development does not comply with any of the relevant exceptions to inappropriate development in the Greenbelt listed in paragraph 149 of the framework. The development is therefore inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. Clearly, the development impacts on Greenbelt openness in both a visual and spatial sense, and it is not considered that any of the arguments that have been advanced are collectively sufficient to outweigh the harms to the Greenbelt. In addition, the development is considered to be an incongruous and discordant feature within the street scene and fails to respect the character of the immediate locality. Again, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Okay, Tony, you can speak now. Councillor, can you start the timer, please? Okay. I think you're muted, Tony. Yes, according to this, you are. Yeah. That's
Hello,
it.
can you hear me?
Got you. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Good evening.
Good evening.
The arguments against this application put forward have excluded various factors with regards to the proposed building. Mainly the fact that the size of the building has been determined to provide a suitable shelter for a motorhome purchased by the client to enable his family to take holidays in this country due to the limitations brought about by COVID. The proposals also include a secure workshop for the storage of tools for the client's job as a civil engineering contractor. Local news has recently shown that the theft of vehicles, tools and machinery in rural areas is on the rise in the northwest, including the recent theft of 6 caravans from Eccleston in July this year. The client has had items stolen on 2 occasions recently. Whilst respecting and understanding the planning constraints of building within the Greenbelt, we put forward the application that was refused due to a lack of evidence for very special circumstances. The grounds to support our application we feel are relevant. There have been no objections from the 12 neighbours contacted, only from the planning office. The position of the carport to the front of the house is on an existing hard standing that has been used for parking vehicles for many years. As stated, the access to the rear of the house is limited due to the stream running alongside the house, which would restrict the carport as a side extension. The side elevation of the carport that is against the boundary fence to the access road will be clad in timber to match the existing fence, which, as shown on the photograph in the statement and the planning drawings, has 60% of that elevation obscured by the existing boundary fence. The policy for outbuildings in the Greenbelt says that it is rarely acceptable for buildings to be built in front of the house. It doesn't say that they can't be in front of the house. We've shown in our statement that the building has been proposed to the size needed to provide shelter for a motorhome, and this could only be positioned in its current location, which is on the existing hard standing which has been used for vehicles for over 10 years. If the application was refused, the client would still park the motorhome in this position, as it's the only place in his garden that it can go. On the issue of it being harmful by definition to the Greenbelt, it is within the existing curtilage of the house and therefore a brownfield site. With regards to it being incongruous within the street scene, it will be finished to match the existing boundary fence. The officer's report states that any impacts on neighbours are negligible. As stated earlier, planning sent letters to 12 neighbours and have received no objections from anyone. We would therefore request that members take on board these comments and conclude that the application should be approved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, over to you, members. Councillor Gabbett.
Thank you, Chair. I think in response to the agent's comments there, I think our council officers have quite clearly set out in paragraph 17 and paragraph 18 the plan officer's response to his comments. Those who know me know I'm not too much of a fan of retrospective planning applications, and those that obviously impact on our Greenbelt, which is why I would like to propose that we accept officers' recommendations.
Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second that. it's not the hard standing that's the problem. It's not the fence that's the problem, although I'm not that impressed with the fence either. So more of that, I wouldn't be too impressed. But very rarely we get a chance to look at something, what it will look like before it actually happens. And to say that it stands out like a sore thumb, I think it's a bit of an understatement. So it is just an eyesore visually and spatially. So I have no problems seconding the recommendation.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. Just to point out that a lack of objections is not a vote of confidence from the local residents. They've not written in support of this application. I echo what my colleagues have said. This is an eyesore. It is incongruous, and it's next to a quiet graveyard. It is completely out of place. It is completely inappropriate, and I am quite happy with the office recommendations. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to make any comment? Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. This has been something like this has been applied for before and refused because there were no special circumstances. It's a bit amazing is that someone's going to throw something up if they couldn't demonstrate then and can't demonstrate now. So I'm happy to go along. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, anyone else? If not, I'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to refuse planning permission respectively for the reasons set out in the report for the erection of a detached carport workshop at Tormore, Church Road, Coppull. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're up to, aren't we? I missed one. 12 Langton Close, Eccleston, pages 119 to 142. Adele's going to present this item. Recommended that planning permission is granted subject to conditions, and I have one registered speaker, the objector, Paul Bramber. Paul, can you hear and are able to speak?
Yes, I can hear.
Thank you, we can hear you.
I'll just put my... I won't be up my...
Okay. Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located on Langton Close within the settlement of Eccleston, and the existing property is a modern detached dwelling house with a detached double garage. Langton Close is a cul-de-sac, and the property is located at the head of the cul-de-sac. Planning permission is sought for alterations to the existing detached garage, including increasing the height of the walls, raising the ridge height, and an extension to the front and its conversion to habitable accommodation. A single-storey front extension is also proposed, in addition to a single-storey rear extension with balcony above and associated external alterations. 3 representations have been received which raise objections, and they're all detailed in the report. It's considered that the proposed alterations to the garage would retain the overall garage structure and would not be overly prominent in the street scene, given the remaining setback from the public highway. It would be set a significant distance from and not directly facing number 12A and 12B, Langton Close, and therefore there would be very limited impact from overshadowing or any resultant loss of privacy. The proposed single-storey extension is considered to be a discrete addition with no unacceptable resultant impacts on neighbour amenity. The single-storey rear extension with the balcony above reflects the modern design of existing dwelling houses, and in particular this application property. It would be, it's been assessed against the 45-degree standard, and it doesn't breach this, and privacy screens would be conditioned to ensure that privacy is maintained to neighbours. The application is recommended for approval, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Adele. Okay, Paul, would you like to speak now? As you can start the timer. You're muted, Paul.
There we go. Thank you for taking the time to listen to with no objections to the vast majority of the plans, only the rear single-storey extension containing the balcony. I'd like to refer to the planning considerations document. I believe several of the points will be breached if the application is approved. Item number 12 states, in many cases, balconies are unacceptable. They should be designed into the fabric of the property We believe a balcony has 9 foot wide by 5 foot high, which increased to 6 foot with brickwork, will be unsightly and not an adverse effect on visual amenity from our kitchen and bedroom. I believe number 16 will be breached, overbearing impacts. Number 17 as well, which will have a significant loss of light, which will clearly occur in our kitchen and son's bedroom. Item 18, the SPD states balconies or terraces which lead to an unacceptable level of overlooking or are visually intrusive are unacceptable. So my question for the committee will be, if this is going to be passed, please could you tell me if the single-storey rear extension balcony follows the exception rather than the rule? If a 9 foot by 5 foot screen is not deemed visually intrusive, it does beg the question, what does? Because when we look out from our garden, when we look out from our kitchen, we will just see, I don't like to use the word eyesore, but it will have a significant impact on our enjoyment of our garden and property. Number 31 mentions there will be limited traffic. However, as the first speaker stated, number 12 is at the head of the cul-de-sac. And this is the main turning area for residents and residents visitors, and also at the head of the cul-de-sac, which hasn't been mentioned, is a small children's play area which is frequented by local children. So I believe works vehicles will have an increased danger and an impact on those children potentially playing. And finally, I just wanted to say that we bought this house as our forever home due to its stunning views and location. We suspect the applicant also enjoys the stunning views, which for them will be totally unaffected, whereas for us, it will be significantly impaired. And I just want that point to come across, that it will affect our enjoyment of our home, and that's why we're objecting, not to any other part of the application, just the rear single-storey extension with balcony. So thank you for listening, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, over to you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thanks, Chair. As you see in the report, I asked for this item to come before committee because it is quite a complicated suggestion. When you look at the plans, you can see how complicated it is, and as the resident has just referred to, it's similar, if you recall, Mum, to the site visit that we had at home, where there was a rear extension overlooking another property. And I think this would be equally adverse effect. Paragraphs 22, 23 and 24 describe the very complicated nature of the 45-degree angle, etc. And it does say somewhere on paragraph 22, it is considered on balance. Now, when I see that on a report, I want to have a good look at that. So what I'd like to propose, Chair, is that we have a site visit to have a look at this, similar to the ones that we did before, that we can have a look. It's very close proximity to the number 11, and I think it will be worthwhile and fair to all the parties involved, the applicant and the objector, to have a look at it on site. And I'll make that proposition, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Heapey.
I'll press my button. I'd like to second that, Chair. I'm a bit concerned about the balcony overlooking the rear gardens of the properties. We're often reluctant to put balconies on developments, and I'm a bit concerned about it. So I'll back a site visit.
Any more comments from anybody? I've had a proposer and a seconder for a site visit. So all those in favour of a site visit, please show. Anybody against? Okay, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to have a site visit in respect of this matter before them today. And so the matter is deferred until such time that the site visit takes place. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 3I, 3 Tormore Close, Heapey, pages 143 to 166, with an update on your addendum, although the recommendation remains the same. Adele's going to present this item, which is planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I have two registered speakers, and objector, George Deans, and the applicant, Adam Crompton. George, Adam, can you speak and hear?
I can hear you.
Thank you.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent, we can hear you. Okay, Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to a relatively modern detached property located on Tormore Close in Heapey. Number 2 faces the corner of Tormore Close and Blackbrook Close, with the rear elevation facing the side elevation of number 3, albeit slightly angled away. The application property is essentially L-shaped, with a double garage projecting towards the front of the dwelling, accessed at 90 degrees to the front door. A patio area lies to the side and rear of the property, adjacent to the boundary with number 2. A 2-metre high boundary fence lies along this common boundary, with number 2 having some conifers and other foliage adjacent to this boundary. Planning permission is sought for a single-storey side extension to the dwelling, which would follow the line of the existing attached garage and would project further towards the west than the main part of the dwelling. I'd refer you to the proposed site plan that indicates where the proposed extension would sit. A single-storey rear element would be added to the property adjacent to number 4 Tormore Close as well, to fill in an existing enclave to the rear elevation, and one half of the existing double garage would be converted into habitable accommodation. An obscurely glazed window would be inserted into the side elevation, and a window would replace the existing garage door. Representations have been received from the occupier of the neighbouring property at number 2, raising issues of concern regarding the trees along the boundary, overlooking of the garden and the property values, loss of outlook, impact on water drains, noise intrusion due to the toilet, and potential for high hedge legislation to be utilised. No objections have been received from any of the statutory consultees, and LCC Highways have requested that amenity issues are considered, and the council's tree officer has suggested a tree protection condition. The proposed extensions are located to the rear of the property and as such would not be highly prominent or visible within the street scene. Wider views would be screened by the extended property at number 2 and its own outbuilding. From the frontage, the proposed conversion of the garage would be visible, with the garage door being replaced by a window. Materials across the development could be secured to match the existing property, and an appropriate condition is recommended. As such, it is not considered that any part of the proposal would be out of keeping with the host property, the street scene, or the surrounding locality. With regard to neighbouring impacts, number 4 has no windows in the gable end, and the proposed extension on this side of the property would not project beyond the rear elevation of this dwelling. Consequently, the resultant relationship would be acceptable. With regard to number 2, the proposed side extension would bring the side elevation closer to the rear boundary and would introduce 2 windows in the side elevation. These would be located approximately half a metre from the common boundary and would not protrude above or result in any views up and over the fence line, and consequently it's considered there would be no overbearing impact or loss of privacy. The council's tree officer has recommended a condition requiring adherence to British standards for any trees along the common boundary during construction. The loss of the garage space is considered to be acceptable given the existing driveway and the substandard size of the garage based on current standards in any event. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Adele. George, would you like to speak now, please?
Yes.
Right, Taz, can you start the timer? Okay, over to you.
I address the chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. Members of the committee, I am speaking to you as a 79-year-old retired chartered engineer who has lived here in Heapey for 7 years. My house, number 2, sits on a corner plot, and its unusual orientation with number 3 means my dining room, conservatory, utility room and upper storey all face and are dominated by and overlooked by the roof and side of number 3 across the main garden. My objection concerns only the single-storey kitchen extension that extends the mass of built development across the whole of the end of my garden to the detriment of my residential amenity. This can be seen on the proposed elevation drawing and amplified by the picture I am showing you. Bringing the wall of the residential part of the building and the new roof about 2.5 metres towards the boundary fence, in line with the garage back wall, is very disadvantageous to me and my property. The picture I've shown you is a construct of what it will be. The barge board and gutter are about 500mm from the boundary fence, and the wall about 880mm from the fence. The trees you see close to the boundary provide an essential buffer and shield from the mass of my neighbour's property. Unfortunately, the roots are likely to spread under the boundary and will possibly be cut through by the foundation excavations and rerouting of sewer drains and reposition of a manhole, resulting in the destabilisation of the trees or worse. I accept that any damage to the trees and how it is resolved is a private matter between me and my neighbour, but the loss of the trees would have a severe impact on my residential immunity and the reasonable enjoyment of my garden and property. In a word, my neighbour's gain will be my loss. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Adam, would you like to speak now? Taz, can we start the timer? Okay.
Okay, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm Adam Crompton and I am the applicant for the planning submission at 3 Tormore Close. I'll try and keep this as short as possible. So over the last 18 months, COVID has been a challenge for us all and it's led to a lot of change for everyone, but not all of this is bad. I've spent more of this time working at home remotely to my wife and children, using the magic of Teams, as we do again now, to remain safe. The future for us all is going to be different, and phrases such as dynamic and hybrid working are now becoming the new norm, and accordingly our homes are going to change to suit this new way of working. Our families have never been more important to us, with all the restrictions imposed and the hardship of not being able to spare this time with our loved ones. For this reason, we have put forward this application to create a space that we can work and spend more time at home with our children, to find our way to space to sit and entertain. As referred to in the report, the main proposed single-storey extension, to which number 2 has commented, is to create an open kitchen family room to the side of elevation, which infills a patio area to the side of our house, which brings the external wall in line with the existing garage wall which already exists and therefore does not encroach any closer to the boundary of number 2 than the existing line, and which is, to be fair, is consistent with most other houses on this estate, probably most other estates around Chorley. To clarify the comments, we don't have any trees within our boundary, and the access path to the gate adjacent number 2, so that runs between the garage and our adjacent property, is to be maintained. We do not envisage any significant impact on the conifer trees. And as Mr. Deans has said, it does provide a nice buffer, and we would like to maintain that for our privacy as well. So we do not envisage any significant effects to that. There is reference to the drains, and we've said we're not adding any additional sinks, toilets or bedrooms to the property. And for any construction projects of this type, alterations to existing drains are inevitable and not uncommon. We do not see this as a concern. As the planning officer has said, the building materials chosen for the extension, it is intended to match the existing materials, and the single pitch roof wraps around into an existing single roof already in place. And then from our opinion, the vista from the property at number 2, we see little change or impact from the views. The windows, which also face number 2 to the new bathroom and side door, have been confirmed to have obscured privacy glass. And the 2 new opening windows to the side elevation, as part of the consultation with the planning case officer, we have agreed to lower to no greater than 2 metres so that they would not give a view into the neighbouring garden. We therefore do not see any legal or planning reason as to why this planning application should not be granted, and support the officer's recommendation that planning be granted. And thank you all for your time and consideration on this matter.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Had this been a 2-storey extension, I might have understood the objections here, but this is a single-storey extension, and I can't see how it would cause any kind of problem with the neighbours' amenity. So I'm happy to support this, and I'm happy to propose those officer recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Heaton,
Yes, I'll second the recommendation, Chair.
anyone else wish to make any comment? No? If not, I'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Over to you, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So members have unanimously decided to grant planning permission subject to conditions for a single-storey side and rear extension and conversion of part of garage to habitable accommodation at 3 Tormore Close, Heapey. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, that's the planning. Done, that side of it. Item 4, the appeals report, pages 167, 168. Adele?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report is only detailing appeals lodged, really, and to note that there is an appeal against the enforcement notice that was served regarding the motocross track a little bit earlier in the summer. That's all with regard to that, but I want to make reference to, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, are we happy to note that report? Yeah, okay, thank you. And item 5, TPO. I've lost my bit of paper. TPO 1 in Heapey, page 169, 178. Adele? Sorry. Okay, it's been moved. Seconded. Everybody happy with that? Okay, right. Don't need to say anything, Adele. With that, I've no other items. Thank you. I'm so pleased that everything went so smoothly tonight. Thank you. Okay. We can stop the recording now, please.